Well, welcome back. Thanks for clicking on again. Unless, of course, this is the first time you're clicking on a video by me, then welcome again for the first time. And if it is your first time, I'll try to be gentle. I wasn't gentle on myself trying to answer this question. I mean, my friend Susan asked me this question after she saw my other videos about Judas, and she got the point I was making there, but still she had to ask me, so why is this so important? Why does it matter today? Does it really matter whether Judas was innocent or guilty? Why does it matter and who cares? It's not exactly the way she put it, but I think that pretty much carries the import of a question. And she got me to thinking about it so much, I actually I had to remember it all, I had to start writing everything down. I started taking notes. See? So, the way your mind works, you think of one thing, then you think of another thing, and it keeps multiplying. And so, I filled up a couple of pages here, just a couple of pages with notes. Want to see it again? Can't. Wouldn't do you any good. You couldn't read my handwriting. But it's an important question, and it deserves, as thorough an answer as I can give it. Look, so I'm going to go into this question as carefully as I can. I'm going to try to be blunt and to the point. But let's just keep this between you and me, right? I mean, God forbid that scholars should get wind of what's happening here, that somebody's interested in rational discussion of the New Testament, of the Gospels, and the story of Jesus' death, and that somebody's interested in exposing all the harm that academic scholars continue to do. God forbid scholars get wind of that. So this is on the QT, just between us, all right? The obvious answer to Susan's question why this is important is it's a simple case of justice for Judas. I mean, if it's true, if it's provably true that Judas was innocent, if it's provably wrong to accuse Judas having been a traitor, there is no rational case to be made for it, and it's quite a good rational case to be made for his innocence, then that should be said, that should be established. We have to do those things, right? I mean, I think it's important. Simple case of justice. And it's not only justice for Judas, it's justice for the gospel authors as well. Gospel scholars make these ancient writers out to be, well, first of all, they do two things. First of all, what they do is they make the gospel authors say things they never said. The gospel authors gave us all this ambiguous, quite unbelievable amount of ambiguous evidence about Judas. And what do gospel scholars do? They rewrite it into unequivocal negative evidence, or unequivocally negative evidence. And that's just wrong. It's just wrong to rewrite what the gospel authors did, from the ambiguity, that they gave us to this supposedly forthright negative evidence, which they don't do for the most part. And it's unjust, unfair to do that to the gospel authors. The second injustice they commit against gospel authors is that most modern scholars make out the ancient gospel writers to be childish, primitive people, more interested in myth than history, better at myth-making than preserving historical evidence and giving us real history. And that's a severe injustice to the gospel authors, who are quite good historians. And if you study them carefully, you realize that most of what they've given us is very good historical evidence. So to misrepresent these quite good historians as myth makers is a severe injustice, and it should be stopped. It should not. That injustice should not allowed to go unchallenged. That's my point. So it's a justice for the gospel authors as well. The other thing is that once we thoroughly establish that Judas was innocent, and this will go on, also continue that it's also provable that Jewish leaders were not complicit in the death of Jesus either. Once we establish all that, it's the beginning of the end of the myth that Jesus was surrounded by Jewish enemies, and that it's Jewish enemies primarily who did Jesus in. I think it's very important to end that myth, and you can't deny that myth goes on today and has repercussions today. Do I really have to remind people of that? Do I really have to remind people that the terrorists who attacked the World Trade Center on 9/11, and in their previous attack in the 1990s, one of the reasons why they focused on the World Trade Center, because they believed a lot of Jews lived there. If you remember, their original goal had been they were going to attack Jews in Brooklyn. Then they decided for a variety of reasons to switch to the World Trade Center, one of them being that a lot of Jews lived there, or rather worked there. And it's that belief, and that belief that's very much fostered by this ancient myth of Jews being enemies to Jesus, that helps to create something like that. So it does have repercussions today. It's important to end that. But I want to get back to that point about justice for Judas. A lot of people may be thinking, he's not a family member, he's not somebody I know, why should I care about justice for Judas? And my response to that is, really? Do you really want to make that statement? I challenge that. You know, you personally don't have to take an interest in justice for Judas. I understand that. That's fine if you're not interested in justice for Judas, you on a personal level. But you really can't argue, can you, that it's not important to seek justice for this man? I mean, look, here's a long, roundabout way of making this point, but you might be interested in, you might be a fan of some of the cop shows and detective shows they have on TV. I'm gesturing in that direction because that's where my TV set is. You might be a fan of something like the CSI programs. A little too gruesome for my taste, you know, all that makeup and special effects they do on and making up corpses and disgusting and breaking them open and whatnot, you know. I prefer something like NCSI. I like that show much better. NCSI Los Angeles, which I've gotten into as well. But I'm even a bigger fan of shows like Monk, following the exploits of Adrian Monk with Tony Shalhoub, or The Mentalist with Simon Baker as Patrick Jane, the Mentalist. I was a fan of Numbers when that was on the air. I like any show that makes the point, that has the theme that the mind is mightier than the gun. I'm a big fan of shows like that. Or even a show, you know, I'm a huge fan of The Closer. God, I love that show. That is the most intense cop show I have ever seen on TV. I mean, with Kira Sedgwick, I'm not sure how to pronounce her first name, as Chief Brenda Lee Johnson. My God, she is intense, and the whole show is intense. Watching 2 back-to-back episodes of that can be quite overwhelming. I love that show. But the reason why I bring these shows up is that you may have seen a show something like this, and you would probably be more likely to have seen this on one of the CSI programs, a show perhaps where they find the dead body of a homeless person. A homeless man or a woman, they find the body in an alley or in a park, and, you know, soon enough, you know, it becomes apparent that this person was murdered. So obviously they examine and take photographs of the body on site. They also take the body back to the lab, and they examine everything. I mean, they bring every technological resource to bear. Their computers, electron microscopes, whatever else they have. They examine every thread and fiber on that person's clothing, on their body, every stain on the clothing, any stains on the body nearby. A missing button might be significant. They find any strange objects nearby, that might be significant. They'll examine the body carefully for every scratch mark, every bite mark, every wound, every puncture wound. Oh my God, there's a puncture wound on the neck. Oh, and it's not just any puncture wound. No, it's a puncture wound made by a rat. Oh, and it's not just any rat. It's a rare species of rat found only in the Himalayas. And oh, what do you know? There are people in America who actually keep this Himalayan rat as pets. And what do you know? There's only one pet shop in Manhattan that sells this species of rat as pets. And so pretty soon they've got a list of suspects, and they've narrowed it down to a prime suspect, and pretty soon they're going to have their man or woman who committed this murder. And we admire that, right? Even though, and especially even though, because we know, at least I know, that in real life a homeless person is not going to get this kind of justice. They're not going to bring every technological resource to bear on the case of a homeless man or homeless woman. Come on, who are they kidding, right? It's not going to happen. It's expensive, all that technology. Not to mention, they're not going to assign a whole team of detectives to a homeless person. Not in real life, we know that. But it's fun to see it on TV, isn't it? It's fun to fantasize about it. I mean, it's thrilling and inspiring to think that they might possibly do this for a homeless person. I mean, it's just great, right? Or to see Monk or Patrick Jane or Chief Johnson work on a case like that. That'd be just terrific. And we admire that kind of thing. So I say, if you admire justice for a homeless person, why not Judas? You know, he's been made homeless by history, in a sense. So if you can have justice for a homeless person, if that thrills us, why not justice for Judas? Isn't that important? And you know, when I think about it, when I thought about this, I realized there was actually kind of a comparable case on one of the episodes of Monk. It's the first episode where Natalie makes her appearance and will become Monk's new assistant. Sharona was his assistant from day one, from the very first episode, and she's gone back to New Jersey to take up life again with a former husband. And so this is the first episode with Natalie. It was a woman living alone in her apartment with her 10-year-old daughter, about 10 years old. Her husband was killed in Iraq or Afghanistan. And twice in 1 week, a man has broken into her house. Well, the first time, a man disguised as an electrical worker, I think, wheedled his way into her house. And, you know, she got rid of him. She got suspicious. Then a week later, a few days later, a man breaks into her house in the middle of the night. And in a struggle, I think she kills him. And the police are called in, Monk is called in, and they realize it was self-defense. But everybody's curious why these men have been coming to her apartment. It's approaching the 10-minute mark, and I'm going to have to get back to you in part 2. Stay tuned here.